Hello, my name is Abigail, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I bought. Most of them this year. It's going to be definitely a 2025 heavy video, but some of them I purchased in 2023. Some of them I pre ordered. Um, and this is a list of the books that I bought because I needed them right now, right now, right now, have to read them immediately. And then for whatever reason, they've been sitting on my shelf since I came into my possession. I broke this video up into 3 sections. First of which is going to be book of the month. Second is going to be I needed it in my hand that minute or I was not going to survive. And 3 is going to be a section that I pre-ordered all those books and I still haven't read them. Book of the Month and I have a pretty tumultuous relationship. We've had a on again, off again, a little bit of a toxic relationship because I keep buying their books. And when I first started, when I became a member in 2020, my goal became to read that month's selection, whether I ended up buying 1 book or 3 books. I set myself a goal to read all of those books in that month. I wasn't allowed to make selections for the next month until I had finished that previous month's. And that went on for 3 months, and then we stopped. And it has been downhill since. I typically gravitate towards the thrillers because usually they have a selection of lit fic and contemporary fiction, sometimes historical fiction, and I don't fancy many of those genres. I consider myself to be a romance, thriller, horror reader. And don't get me wrong, they definitely have thrillers and horrors on Book of the Month, but for the most part, it is contemporary lit fic, and that's fine. It's just not my jam. So I've recently broken up with Book of the Month. However, I do have a couple books, as I will for a while, that I have not read. So the first book that I will talk about is The Favorites. I had been hearing about this book, and it had been compared to Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I'm like, stop right there. Say no more. Say less, in fact. So I picked up The Favorites, and from what I understand, this book is about 2 figure skaters who start figure skating really young. And I think it's told like a Daisy Jones style. That's what I thought, but I could be totally wrong. I thought it was told, yeah, it looks to be like broken up in between chapters, sort of the same way Daisy Jones was written. So in between the chapters, you'll get that um, narrator and the sort of like there's not script, but like what they said, like a transcript maybe is a better word for it. So it is in there like that, and it does seem to break up every other or every chapter. You'll get a section of that, and I think if I'm not mistaken, it's told the same way, sort of like looking in from the outside, almost like a docu-series kind of thing. And I think this is sort of like inspired by that event where that figure skater did something and like disfigured someone else. I think. I'm not sure. I think the real person's name is Tammy, but I have actually no idea. I heard Taylor Jenkins Reid compared to Daisy Jones and the Six, and I said, okay, it's going in my Book of the Month box. So I purchased it and I got this, gosh, it was a 2025 January selection. So I must have had it since January and haven't I haven't picked it up. It's definitely been on my to be read list for a very long time. It goes into like I sort of look at my shelf and I'm like, what do I want to read? I think I want to read The Favorites, but then something else always comes and steals that moment from The Favorites. Eventually, I'll read it because I do intend to read every single book that I own, especially Book of the Month books, because it's like I'm paying this money. Like, give me the goods. And I just haven't been able to pick up the goods yet. Next up, also from Book of the Month, is First Time Callers by B.K. Borison. From what I understand about this one, this is a single mom whose child calls into this like dating show so that this gentleman can find the callers like a perfect date or something like that. And I think that they end up sort of testing things out. And I heard that this has podcast elements, which has been a favorite of mine for some time. I always love a little podcast element. I heard that the audiobook is really great for actually both of these, and I may end up choosing to pick them up on audio just for that reason. However, I still need to get to these books because I bought them. And in that moment, I think I can pretty confidently say with all three of the Book of the Month selections, which I will talk about this one in just a moment, I look at Book of the Month, and there are certain books, like back when I first started with Book of the Month, this is why we have a toxic relationship, because back when I first started being a like BFF of Book of the Month, there was actually books that I was anticipating being on there because that author had been on there in the past. Like Taylor Jenkins Reid was on there in the past, so was Riley Sager. And these are some of my auto-buy authors. Despite me not having a good relationship with Riley Sager right now, he is still an auto-buy author for me. And so I would look for those books to be on Book of the Month. But the last couple of years, for whatever reason, they haven't been. I also was following, I think it was Sarah Pekkanen for a while, and those books stopped being on there, and we sort of gravitated more to that lit fic, that contemporary women's fiction, and that's just not my avenue. Obviously, it's not my avenue because I ended up picking up Phantasma. This also I had heard a lot of things about, and I heard that it was like sort of like demony and sort of dark, and I wanted to pick it up. I also had finished a book on Audible, and you know how they do that sort of like 5 minute Audible recommends this, and it was like the very first 5 minutes of this, and it had gone into like descriptions of like the devils and the this little chart here. Basically, it was reading me that chart, and I was like, do I want to read that? And then I started finding out that a lot of people had enjoyed it. And I guess this was a finalist for 2024 for Book of the Month. So a lot of people loved it. And I was like, okay. And then I bought it. And then I was like, wait, Enchantra is coming out. So let me not read the first book until closer to the second book so that I can read the first book and the second book back to back if I love it. Well, Enchantra has come out. It is sitting on my shelf, and I have picked up neither of these books. So just like with the rest of these and a lot of my Book of the Month selections, I pick them because I already paid for that credit. And rather than skipping and having paid for, like, my goal when I go on to Book of the Month and like those type of subscriptions is I pay my little credit price, and then I get access to add my little add-ons for $9.99, making the hardcovers effectively cheaper for me. So yes, I pay my little $16.99 plus tax, and then I do the add-ons. But if there's nothing that's gripping me from those 5, 6 selections that Book of the Month has, I wind up picking something that I'm not necessarily in love with, just so that I can get something that wasn't one of their 5 or 6 selections, so that I can get my money's worth. And that's kind of why we're in a toxic relationship and why I've chosen to break up with Book of the Month. I've opted to cancel my Book of the Month or pause. I'm pausing because what happens if there's something that I need to have? You know, I don't want to cancel. I don't want to say goodbye forever. I want to like call them when I'm lonely. You know what I mean? I've decided rather than continue with the Book of the Month, though, I have decided to switch over to Aardvark. I picked up my first box, and it should be delivered sometime later this month, so I'll let you know how that goes. I'm excited to try it out because they've released a lot of books that I've been incredibly interested in the past, but I just didn't know Aardvark existed. So when I found out Aardvark existed, I was like, Book of the Month who? Which also contributes to the toxic relationship, because if I'm ready to drop them that fast, I probably would have been able to drop them significantly sooner had I found out about Aardvark sooner. This next section of books is not Book of the Month related, but it is a similar kind of vein in that I found out about it after it had been released, and I thought, oh my god, if I don't have this, I'm just not going to survive. And we'll start that off with Blood of Hercules. So I know next to nothing about this book, but it is by Jasmine Mass, and it has a stunning sprayed edges. So I picked this one up because I love a Greek mythology retelling. Song of Achilles is my favorite book of all time. I regularly reread it. And while I don't mean to compare every single historical fiction Greek mythology book to Song of Achilles, I naturally do it. And because I do that, I tend to pick up a lot of Greek mythology retellings. This is a female Hercules, So that's really all I kind of know about this one. Unfortunately for myself and this book, I saw a pretty cover, and I saw that it was a Greek retelling, and I put it in my cart and I bought it. But I do know that the second one is coming out sometime, I believe in September, October. So my intent is to hope to wait for the second one to read them back to back, like I tried to do with Enchantra and Phantasma, but I didn't. Hopefully, I can read The Blood of Hercules and the sequel actually for real. The next book on my list has been around for a long time. I've been seeing it and hearing about it, and everyone loved it, and I was just simply not interested, to the point where I just didn't care, and it never made it into my cart. However, I've been looking into some historical fiction and actually enjoying it. I just looked up the publication for this, and this has been out since 2015, and I have been a reader since longer than 2015, but I thought I didn't want to read this. And then I started reading a little bit of historical fiction, and I decided, well, maybe I do. Maybe I do want to read it. And one day I was on Amazon, and it was like the paperback was on sale for like six and change, so I bought it, and I'm like, I'm gonna read this. Like, I'm gonna start it the second it gets here. I opened the package and I put it on my shelf, and that was all she wrote. So I'm hoping that I can read The Nightingale. I've heard amazing, stellar things. Once again, I don't fancy myself a historical fiction person, but lately I have been gravitating towards things of that nature because I have had a really good experience lately with some historical fiction, and I'm hoping that this will also give me fantastic vibes and fantastic feelings. So what I know about this is I believe it's two sisters and it's World War II, and one of them is in Paris at least. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the sisters is housing soldiers, like being forced to house soldiers. So that has to be incredibly difficult. And I will find out more once I read The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This final section of books is books that I pre-ordered. I have two in this section. One of them is significantly more shameful than the other, so we'll save that one for last. But the first one up, I have Cash, and this is by Jessica Peterson. From my knowledge, I believe this was initially published on Kindle Unlimited. However, I didn't read it. I wanted to buy the pretty sprayed edge cover with the little cowboy boots. This was picked up by traditional publisher Bloom Books, which majority of my little Kindle romance, my Kindle Unlimited romances that have been picked up by Bloom Books, and I've enjoyed most of them, especially Elsie Silver, which is small town cowboy romance. Hello, I'm hoping I love this one as well. They are being traditionally published by Bloom Books with these fancy little sexy little sprayed edge covers, so my goal is to pick them up as they come out. However, this I've had for, I believe, like a little bit about maybe like a month or two now. I'm not sure. It was written for Kindle Unlimited back in 2024, I believe. That's what the publication in here says. However, this special edition was released within the last couple months. One of my favorite things about Bloom Books is just how big that writing is. I happen to love a book with big writing because it just makes it feel like it's flying by faster. I get that it's the same number of words as if it would be like smaller text, less pages, but a fat chunky book like this, it's not even that chunky either. It's over 400 pages, but it's not even really that thick, but it's a sizable book for a romance. It's over 400 pages, and the writing is big, so it's probably would be less than 400 pages if it was smaller text, but I love a thick book with big text. Once again, this is a situation where I know basically just the tropes. It is a cowboy, and they're probably in a small town. And oh, look, she's the one with the cattle ranch this time. I just read the first line. When her estranged father unexpectedly dies, he leaves his massive cattle ranch to her, but not without a catch. To collect her inheritance, city girl Molly will have to move back to the small town Texas ranch she left as a child when her parents split and manage it for a full year. But once again, it is a situation where, despite having purchased it thinking, oh my God, I'm going to read this the second it arrives, literally pre-ordering it, it has sat on my shelf since it arrived into my home. The last book I have to show you is, I would consider, one of the most shameful, because I pre-ordered it in November of 2023. I got it in September of 2024. So I pre ordered it almost an entire year early. And we are coming right up to the end of 2025, and I still have not read Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune, which is the sequel to House on the Cerulean Sea. It also has yellow sprayed edges, so I'm a sucker for sprayed edges. What is this book about? I can't really tell you what it's about because it's a sequel. So I'll tell you what House on the Cerulean Sea is. It tells you right on the cover or right on the back that House on the Cerulean Sea is a book about sort of like a found family. So there's a man who is taking care of these kids, and I think it's Child Protective Services comes to visit the house because there's been reports of things because one of the children, Lucy, is the Antichrist. And despite it being very heavy in just that sentence, it is the lightest, fluffiest, most adorable, most amazing book. And I regularly think about the house in the Cerulean Sea. And so when I found out that there was going to be a second book, I obviously pre ordered it almost an entire year before it was released. And here it is, coming up on 2 years that I placed the order, and I have not read this book. So these are the was this 7 books that I bought because I needed right now, and have not read. And my goal, if I was an intelligent human, would be to read all 7 of these books before the conclusion of 2025. So that is like a little note to self, a little goal to complete. So rather than put these back on the shelf where they were housed prior to this video, some of which were housed right in here. So I could probably leave these in here. But the other ones, specifically the Book of the Month ones and the Kristen Hannah book, they are actually going to hang out with me so that I can see them every day and feel the pressure to complete all 7 of them before the conclusion of 2025. And that is going to be it for today's video. Let me know in the comments down below, are there any books that you have purchased with every intent to read like the second that they get there, and you just for whatever reason haven't read it yet? Let me know that in the comments down below. Also, have you read any of these books that I just held up? And if you have, what did you think about them? Encourage me. Tell me I should read them because why? Let me know everything in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.